Did you know that Biden is the worst president in American history now? Gosh, okay, hold on. Okay. Domestic policy aside, we've gotten some information out for the past 2 days that Joe Biden probably like directly cost us this election in a really obvious and straightforward way. This isn't like breaking, it's from 2 days old, which I know that to you guys that means it's like old news, grandpa. I get that. Let me just assemble all this. Thank you. Absolutely insane though. Okay, so let's review what we've been talking about in the wake of this election. An election, by the way, I'm not Lichtman. I'm not going to pretend that I'm like Nostradamus or whatever, or that I have access to the keys. The keys are too strong for me. They would kill me if I touched them. I'm not I didn't get the result of this election right. I kind of wavered at the last minute there. I felt like maybe there'd be a Kamala blowout. I think there were some signs that pointed in that direction. A lot of people thought it was going to be like an agonizing, grinding, slow, like very difficult. But Trump won in the first night, so most people were surprised by how quickly Trump won. It seems like the Trump administration was too, because Trump was claiming there was fraud in Pennsylvania, which he withdrew after he won, because I guess he decided that it wasn't worthwhile to like expend time and political energy after having already won. Like my guess is after he won, people in the Trump camp were like, okay, just drop that because we've got like 50 death camps to build and we don't need to waste time on this. Like in 2016, you can keep pretending 3 million illegals voted for Hillary Clinton. But in this one, like you've won, and don't worry, sir, you won't have to win an election again. So I don't think anyone expected Kamala Harris to lose in the way that she did. I still believed, and I still believe, and I think what we're about to look at indicates that this is true, that Kamala Harris was a better pick than Joe Biden. So what is then my analysis? Why? Well, I think the problem is that the Democrats very openly don't believe in a single thing, and Republicans pretend to care very strongly about a few things that they hit on the messaging of over and over and over and over and over again, Democrats very openly don't care about a thing. They don't push the bar. They don't pick any fights. They don't promise to change anything, not in a meaningful, direct way. Their greatest accomplishments are fiddly little policy goals that the average American doesn't know about because they're too, menial. They're too detailed. And even when they get those wins, they barely talk about them. Remember how the Biden administration passed the infrastructure bill and it was very good and it helped the country a lot. And a bunch of Republican politicians who voted against it started taking credit for the developments in their counties and their states from it. Like Republican senators who voted against it would be standing there next to a bridge being built and they'd be like, yeah, we're building this beautiful bridge, and it was built with the funds of the bill they voted against. Democrats didn't even push on this that much. Mostly it was just like Twitter dunks. The main reason why Kamala Harris lost is because people can see she doesn't believe in anything and doesn't want to change anything. Nobody wants the status quo. You can literally look at this in polling. Nobody thinks the country is going in a good direction. Even a lot of Democrats don't. Nobody thinks the status quo is acceptable. Nobody's happy. It doesn't matter what underlying indicators there are. People were probably more hopeful back in 1932 when the average cost of living relative to people's income was objectively worse than it is now. Like even if people back there were washing their clothing with washing boards and sending children off to work in the fields or whatever, it didn't matter. People felt optimistic. People were happier with the direction the country was moving in. Here in America today, people don't feel that way. The status quo can't win. Kamala Harris represented a break from the status quo, and that representation was immediately undermined by Kamala Harris refusing to be anything but the status quo. We've already gone over multiple times that interview where she was asked what, if anything, about would be different between you and Joe Biden in your administration, and Kamala Harris literally said nothing. The fact that she said nothing in a time where Biden's dissatisfaction was so high, where so many people were unhappy with the direction the country was going in, the fact that she didn't even have a stump speech answer to that. Like that, in my mind, if I was Kamala Harris, my first thought would be I can say it. And my second thought would be, I need to be ready when people ask me, because people right now are not happy with Biden. Biden would lose this election. I need to be able to distinguish myself. And I would have an answer for that. That's literally number one. Somebody asks me what my favorite food is. Ketchup from the bottle. Somebody asks me if I'd be different from Joe Biden. Yes. And here's how. You need to be ready for that. It's Hitler. Name a woman. A Hitler. Yeah. The fact that she didn't have an answer to that, genuinely psychotic. To be fair, I don't think any other person could have done that much better, because Democrats will not let you criticize their legacy. Donald Trump attacks the party's legacy all the time. George Bush mostly. John McCain all the time. But if Reagan was still alive, he venerates Reagan, but if Reagan was still alive today, he would shit on Reagan too, and people would love him for it. Reagan is useful only in his death because he is a static, fixed, permanent image for Republicans to point to pretend that they're, I don't know, like holding on to the respectability that he supposedly represents. Supposedly. You know how I feel about Reagan. You know how you should feel about Reagan. Meanwhile, the Democrats can't criticize anyone. Democrats don't talk about Kerry or Gore. They sent Bill Clinton over to Michigan to talk down to Muslim voters, even though Bill Clinton is a pedophile and a right-wing dipshit and just a horrible blight on the party. They continue to consult with Hillary Clinton despite her doing like legendarily poorly in 2016. Obama still has influence. At least Obama won. At least Obama has like genuine clout and presence within the party. The fact that they're touting fucking Hillary Clinton, it's not just because Obama was successful. It's because they can't criticize their own. They're not allowed to. They just don't. They never criticize people within their own party. And for that reason, any other person who ran as the Democratic frontrunner wouldn't have been able to criticize Biden. So maybe our doom was locked in. Maybe like in an entropic sense, like our failure, our breaking apart was kind of like encoded within the beginning, like how life necessarily begets death. Maybe there was nothing we could have done. But I'll tell you one thing. Biden didn't help. This is a clip from Pod Save America, a group of insufferable Obama staffers. I'm talking down to them a little bit here, but, you know, they deserve it. Listen to what they have to say.
They were privately telling reporters at the time that Kamala Harris couldn't win. So they were shivving Kamala Harris to reporters while they told everyone else not a time for an open process and his vice president can't win, so he's the strongest candidate. Then we find out when when the Biden campaign becomes the Harris campaign, that the Biden campaign's own internal polling at the time when they were telling us he was the strongest candidate showed that Donald Trump was going to win 400 electoral votes. That's what their own internal
400. The Biden campaign's own internal polling showed Donald Trump winning in a historic landslide against him. 400 electoral votes. We don't know what that map would have looked like exactly, but here's what a 408 to 130 turnout looks like. Maine, goodbye. New York, goodbye. The blue wall, goodbye. Everything. All of it. That's what Biden was looking at when he decided to run. The second time. Not the first time, the second time. The ego, the arrogance, genuinely unimaginable. There was a, do I have it up here? Pelosi talked about this to an extent where I didn't talk about this the other day. I'm glad I didn't now that there's more info out. Rep. Nancy Pelosi, the former House Speaker, suggested this week it would have been better if the Democratic Party if President Biden had abandoned his re-election campaign sooner and the party had then had a competitive primary process to replace him. In an interview on Thursday with the New York Times, Ms. Pelosi said what was widely reported around the time Mr. Biden dropped out. She believed it was implicitly understood that his exit would be followed by an internal party competition for a new nominee instead of an anointment of Vice President Kamala Harris. Had the president gotten out sooner, there may have been other candidates in the race, Ms. Pelosi said during an interview with Lulu Garcia Navarro, host of The Interview, a Times podcast. She added during the interview, which would be published in full on Saturday, the anticipation was that if the president were to step aside, there would be an open primary. Ms. Pelosi went on, and as I say, Kamala may have. I think she would have done well in that and would have been stronger going forward. But we didn't know that, and that didn't happen. We live with what happened. And because the president endorsed Kamala Harris immediately, that really made it almost impossible to have a primary at the time. If it had been much earlier, it would have been different. So in other words, Biden ran despite internal polling showing that he would get blown out in a legendary loss to Donald Trump And then, after being pressured extensively for months to not do so, to drop out, to do anything, to let an open primary process take place, he spitefully endorsed Kamala Harris, guaranteeing that an open primary couldn't take place because the sitting president's endorsement would effectively just shut that down. Exactly. He was an anchor and he took Harris with him. Well, he took the whole country with him, actually. Yeah, he really did doom us all. And we assumed the best because we weren't spiteful enough against the DNC yet. Two things. One, I didn't have access to his internal polling. 400 electoral votes to Trump? Are you insane? Holy shit. That's one. And for two, we know that the Democrats eventually went with not having an open primary, just running with Kamala Harris. I didn't know that they were pushing for an open primary with the understanding Joe Biden was doing that poorly. My assumption at the time was that if Joe Biden ran back, I don't know, like based on the knowledge we had about a year and a half ago, it would have been a close race with Trump. If the internal polling showed things would have gone that badly, of course Kamala Harris shouldn't have been the one to break out in front because her association with Joe Biden is a taint. To be clear, this means we don't have to give credit to Biden for dropping out anymore. No, we do not. I didn't realize he had info we didn't have access to. We don't have to give him credit for anything. It was pure spite. He initially ran on the assumption everyone, though, he called himself a transition president. Move us away from the Trump era. A one-term president. Then he runs again, thus guaranteeing there's no real primary, of course, because if the incumbent is running, there's basically no primary process, except for people who want to, like, you know, really challenge the status quo, like RFK Jr. or whatever. And then he did finally acquiesce after months and internal polling showing that he was still absolutely doomed, and then he spitefully endorsed Kamala Harris, despite everyone with any common sense knowing that part of his unpopularity, a huge part of it, was his the fact that he was tied to the current dissatisfaction, the current status quo, and she would also be because she was the sitting VP. And she was attacked over it the entire time she ran. Over and over and over again, Republicans were saying, why didn't Kamala Harris get X or Y done when she is in office? And you know what? They were right. Yeah, Kamala Harris doesn't have the power to do that herself, but she never distinguished herself from Joe Biden. If she basically admitted she would have been the same as Joe Biden, then yeah, it's just the same presidency. They were right. The Republicans were correct on this. Like we were, you know, oh, well, she was the vice president. Yeah, but I guess she was no different from Joe Biden. I'll ask the cringe question and get this all out of the way now. Do you think Biden shouldn't have won in 2020? If I have to choose between a timeline where Joe Biden wins in 2020 and Trump wins now, or Trump wins in 2020 and Kamala Harris wins in 2024, we had the worst of the two timelines, easily, objectively. The whole Project 2025 apparatus, all of it has been like assembled in the 4 years. They've had 4 years to prepare. Everything's going to be worse this time. And the only thing we gained over the past 4 years was a holding pattern. All we did was wait. We haven't built out anything. We were not any stronger. We got the worst of the two timelines. Maybe, Donald Trump could have just run the country into the ground for 8 consecutive years. And then after that, he just, like, the country's broken and fallen apart, and we kind of rebuild from that for a while. But now, well, no one knows how bad it's going to get, really. No one except Joe fucking Biden, who was apparently clearly aware of how poorly he was doing, how much political power Donald Trump had amassed purely through dissatisfaction with Trump's, with Joe Biden's campaign. They're smugly saying that Biden is the only person to ever beat Trump. It's just such a stupid. This is what I mean. Like, if we don't grow past this, we're doomed forever. Forever. Reporter asked Karine Jean-Pierre about whether Biden's team showed arrogance of believing he was the only one who could beat Donald Trump. This is the president who's been the only person that has been able to beat Donald Trump. The implication of this is the idea that Donald Trump is like a historically good candidate and not that the Democrats fumbled the bag over and over. The Democrats have just fucked this whole thing up, and they're like, well, what do you expect us to do, man? It's Donald Trump, like the most electable guy ever, you know? Who else could possibly defeat this fucking titan? This warrior of competence and discipline and temperance, capable of, expertly navigating the complex media landscape. Should the voters abandon the Democratic Party? I mean, at this point, what's the practical difference between them abandoning the Democratic Party and them not? At least on a federal level. Keep in mind, I'm talking about the federal Democratic Party, state Democratic parties, and local Democratic parties. Like the local operations operate very differently and have different priorities. But on like a federal level, in a practical sense, I mean, look at this, man. This is insane. This is Biden spitefully throwing the country. He threw 350 million people into a second Trump term. I didn't realize how bad the internal pressure was. I knew that Pelosi was smart for trying to get him to drop out, and I agree with her decision to do so. I didn't realize he knew how bad it would be if he didn't. Mr. Biden endorsed Ms. Harris within an hour after he ended his campaign in July, a decision he made only after an intense pressure campaign for the Democrats that Ms. Pelosi quietly led. His support for the vice president, along with backing from many other Democrats, choked off any other avenue for a challenger to emerge. Over 2 weeks, Ms. Harris swiftly gathered support from delegates, the DNC. And the DNC was like a big event, you know? While some Democrats floated the idea of a quick primary, those proposals never gained traction and were not embraced by the Democratic National Committee or convention delegates. She took issue with comments this week from Senator Bernie Sanders. And this is a reminder then that, like, Pelosi is still a monster. Because Pelosi is very smart, and she has correctly identified within the Democratic Party a problem. She doesn't have a solution. She knows the problem. She was correct. She saw the problem. She worked hard to point out the problem. She doesn't have a solution. Bernie Sanders has not won, Miss Pelosi said. I don't know. I mean, he went from an independent senator to, like, doing phenomenally well in the 2016 primaries in a hostile environment, in a party that, you know, largely venerates their insiders and doesn't respect outsider influence the way that Republicans did with Donald Trump eventually. With all due respect, and I have a great deal of respect for him and for what he stands for, I don't respect him saying the Democratic Party has abandoned the working class families. And that's why this is going to happen again forever. She suggested that cultural issues were more to blame for Democrats' losses among the working class. Sorry, everyone. Despite remember the Bernie Sanders donation map in 2020? Sorry, guys. We don't have any lessons to learn from this. None whatsoever. There's not a single person on this planet that can tell us how to maybe win over working class voters in the blue section here. The blue section here is the area where no one knows how to appeal to them. That's how they've color-coded it. You can't see the key because my camera's blocking it. But the blue here, this is where people are unreachable within the working class. Alaska, he was really popular, it seems. You can take a look at who supported him. He was insanely popular with the working class. Who knew? Who knew that having a guy who actually believes something and is pro-working class in rhetoric and in policy could attract the interest of the working class? Meanwhile, Pelosi on her fucking golden throne that she, you know, bought with the money she got insider trading. If only we were less pro-abortion next time. Maybe we're neutral on the question in the future. You think Bernie could have won deep red states? That's not necessarily what this map suggests. But yeah, I do. I think that Bernie Sanders in his prime could have swept the country. I don't think Donald Trump would have stood a chance against him. More so than ever. Everything that has happened has vindicated my argument that the people want a strong populist message backed by someone with a spine. Donald Trump lies all the time, but he has a spine. Nobody thinks Donald Trump is like this like shifty, like, you know, his consultants whisper in his ear and he's changed his perspective. He comes across, though that does happen. He comes across like somebody with a spine. He sells a strong message. Bernie Sanders is the real deal. I think Bernie Sanders would have fucking swept. And if you doubt that, if you think, oh, well, Bernie Sanders slightly underperformed relative to Hillary Clinton in 2016 in the Democratic primary, how could he have beaten Trump when Hillary Clinton couldn't have beaten Trump? Running in a primary and running in the general are two very different things. I point to the past 3 elections as an example of this. Very different things. And one of the reasons why Democrats keep losing, man. They forget that the whole America isn't like, you know, their consultant class. Upper middle class, highly educated, multiracial, lots of men and women too, but ultimately highly educated upper middle class. They forget that. Do you think he could have run as an independent? No, not for the presidency. He needed a party apparatus behind him. And I think it would have been a blowout. With all of this, time has only vindicated my message, the importance of a spine of a real message, dissatisfaction with the status quo. I think if Bernie Sanders had run in 2016 and 2020, and I know that's a tall order because the man is quite old, but I think that if he had, I think it would have been biblical. I don't think his victory, I don't think he would have scraped by a victory. I think that time has shown us that he would have gotten a turnout the likes of which you could not believe. And for evidence to that, again, look at the 2020 dono map. Do you think a lot of these people have ever donated to a political candidate before? Millions and millions of Americans who never believed enough in a candidate before to donate to them personally. Millions. And they may never get a chance again. Now the DNC has destroyed that. Yes. Don't forget the enemy here, okay? It's the Republicans, but the Democrats sold us out. Biden sold us out, dragged the whole country down with him because he was spiteful about giving up the like a old man who's mad that his family wants him to get rid of his driver's license because he keeps running into shit because he can't see that well or react that well. A spiteful old man. Kamala Harris, completely spineless, shifted all of her positions from the 2020 primary to the vice presidency. Is she pro-Medicare for all? Is she pro-banning fracking? Does she think the wall is a bad idea? Depends on who's the last person who told her what to say, you know? No real spine, no position. Biden has a lot more of a spine. At least he was consistently moderate. Yeah, pro-trans? We'll follow the law. They rat-fucked us. Is she just as much to blame here? Not as much as Biden, but, like, yeah, she could have a spine. It's really the whole Democratic apparatus, though. The DNC just does not want... Look at it. It's all of them. The chair, Schumer, Pelosi, all of them are like, no. The problem here was... the problem here was trans people. We should have been more reaction. Maybe if we had shifted our position, should we be more pro-war or more anti-war? Should we be pro-immigration or anti-immigration? We don't believe in anything, so we'll adopt any set of positions that we need to appeal to the fleeting interests of the inconsistent electorate. We don't have a position to stand on. We don't believe in anything. Tell us what to tell you, American people. Tell us what to lie to you about, and we'll lie to you. Give us anything. We know you shifted right on immigration after Biden took office, so we shifted right too. We didn't stand for that back in 2016, 17, 18, 19. All of that pearl clutching about everything Trump did down at the border, we didn't really care about it. Look, we're anti-immigration too. I hate these people. Bernie Sanders.
Surprised that a Democratic Party which has abandoned working class people would find that the working class has abandoned them. And Independent Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont joins me now. Senator Sanders, welcome back.
Looking as handsome as ever.
To Meet the Press.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here on this Sunday after Election Day. Let's start right there. Your criticism incredibly direct. You say you...
Okay, I know there are people, maybe they're being quiet right now because they know that their head will get bitten off. But, like, are there liberals watching now who understand the issue? All the times you thought, oh, you know, Vosh is like, he's doing the angry socialist bit because it's popular online. He likes the populist messaging because it feels cool to say. Do you understand the issue now? The Democrats aren't just inept. They are ideologically unwilling. Like, and if you can't accept that, you are part of the problem. Like, this isn't about, like, left versus liberal partisanship. You are condemning all of us to Trump, to fascists. You have to accept that. It's not just like and I'm not taking the position like you have to agree with every insane like Chapo Trap House Twitter poster who thinks that, you know, like Kamala Harris's only shot at victory would have been promising to bring Netanyahu to The Hague or whatever. We're talking very much within like an extremely grounded, reality-based approach of basic messaging and the basic ability. Bernie Sanders could have run this country just fine. It's not like he would have been like, he wouldn't have like crashed the economy day one by decommodifying the entire fucking economy or whatever. He would have run the country just fine. You can work within like a liberal policy framework. I'm talking about just having a spine and being populist. And if you don't agree with that, then you're part of the damn you don't have the right to call lefties super online for some of their dogshit stupid opinions on what would or wouldn't lose the election when you held the equally insanely like online like Democrat consultancy class opinion that in reality like 200 million people not turning out to vote, that's just like, well, not 200 million, but you know, a lot of people not turning out to vote, like all of this is just, you know, whatever. There's no like underlying value to having a spine in populist messaging. Let's not learn any lessons from this. I just don't want to lose to fascists, man. Is that too much to ask? I'm not saying you have to like bow down before the Lenin statue in Fremont in Seattle. I'm not saying that you have to like, you know, shift radically left on every single position. This is like very bad. Like if you literally go walk America, walk the earth, find how many voters you can who, if asked about policy issues, will give you like oh, well, you know, I like Trump's policy on X, but, you know, Biden's policy on Y was really good too. You won't find any. They're not real. That's an online perspective. Online in the consultancy class. You're doing Pod Saves America shit. That's not what people care about. Apparently we have to lower our standards. No! Arrogant piece of shit. This isn't lowering your standards. It's meeting people where they're at. People aren't happy. You will not make them happy by running as a spineless worm who wants to change nothing. Democrats are reinventing alchemy in their efforts. How do we appeal to a people who are dissatisfied with the status quo without changing the status quo? What arcane combination of positions do I have to pretend to hold in order to make people who are fundamentally unhappy happy with things being fundamentally the same? And I'm sorry, motherfucker, alchemy ain't real. It's called chemistry, and it's time for you guys to discover Bernium. The solution to your problem. We're engaged in, listen, okay? We engage in the science of the material, of historical materialism and in material science. We've discovered a new molecule, okay? Let's move on before this gets any more tortured.
You think the Democratic Party has, quote, abandoned the working class? How exactly do you think Democrats have abandoned the working class, Senator?
Look, the working people of this country are extremely angry. They have a right to be angry. In the richest country in the history of the world, today, the people on top are doing phenomenally well, while 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. And
the average Twitter liberal rolls their eyes at this. They're like, actually, if you take a look at the data, the definition of living paycheck to paycheck varies pretty massively and actually gives you a bit of wiggle room in case your car breaks down, but like not if it breaks down twice. And also, this is like 4% less than when Biden took office back in 2021. So in reality, like this isn't a real issue. People being unhappy aren't real. Their unhappiness isn't real. Why do I keep losing? Hello?
Millions of families worry that their kids are actually going to have a lower standard of living than they do. You got the top 1% owning more wealth than the bottom 90%. We're the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care.
Okay, Vosh, paycheck to paycheck is kind of a meaningless metric, though, unless you talk to real people in the real world, in which case it's actually like the only way they talk about their finances. It's a meaningless metric unless you talk to real people and care about like real life. But the math, the data, the science, shut the fuck up, nerd. This is politics.
To all of our people, 25% of our seniors are trying to live on $15,000 a year or less. We have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth. And the gap between the people on top and everybody else is getting wider and wider. And then, Kristen, on top of all of that, we got a corrupt campaign finance system which allows billionaires to buy elections. So if you're an average worker out there, you're saying, hey, I'm working longer and longer hours.
Keep in mind, by the way, Republicans will challenge this rhetorically and Democrats won't. One of the biggest talking points Republicans like to dip into is the idea that, like, the elite academics of the Democratic Party are, you know, infiltrating our institutions. George Soros funds everything, blah, 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 you know? Like, they talk about this in a way that engages people. Why do you think people think that Republicans are anti-elites? It's a rhetorical difference. Vosh, when it suits him, says data is important. When it's not, he says data is stupid, laughing, crying emoji. Not to demean the intelligence of a YouTube chatter with no YouTube bio icon who uses the laughing, crying emoji in the live stream chat of a politics streamer, but I'm going to tear into you for a second. Data is important when it comes to making policy judgments and determining what's happening in the real world. In order to win elections, you need people to vote for you, which means they need to like you, or at least like what you're offering them, and that means dealing with their feelings. People living paycheck to paycheck is mostly a vibes-based assessment of their financial situation. Guess what, motherfucker? What do you think they vote on? Data? I was gonna vote for Trump, but then I took a look at a chart that you need an undergraduate degree to read, and now I'm going to vote for... Shut up! People vote based on vibes, so deal with it. That's the world. You want to cry about it? How do you think I feel? I have a sociology degree, admittedly just a bachelor's, but you know what that means? It means I learned shit that has nothing to do with what people think about. Yeah, I can take a look at a poll or do regressive analysis, though I'd have to remind myself how to do it at this point, but all that, like, information, it's not relevant to people's day-to-day experiences. If you want to win elections, you have to talk to people and learn what they care about. If you want to be right online, then you can talk about how, actually, the analysis of the CPI, of the data of the chart of the average income of the yearly, annual, of the, like, you can do that if you want. You can do both. I do both. You can engage with the data and craft good policy, try to make the world a better place through that, and you can reach people through strong messaging that gets to the heart of their anxieties and their fears. Bernie does both. Bernie Sanders' campaign both engaged in populist rhetoric that reached people, but he also had policy positions that were backed up extensively and researched. The money that could be saved through Medicare for All. It wasn't just a vibe thing. There were data-driven arguments for it, but he didn't go up there on stage and say, like, according to... well, I did some research, and the CPI of the data of the chart of the... Like, you just learn where people are at, man. Vosh is right, you have to lie to people. No, you don't! When did I say lie? What did I just say? I didn't say lie. Why do you think you're smarter than the median voter? You're a fucking YouTube chatter in my chat. You're not. You're in the lower fucking quartile. The average voter can't comprehend the high IQ with which I look at charts that Will Stansel posted on Twitter and then agree with him and say, that's right, liberals are stupid. That's right, the average voter votes on things based on, like, how they feel and what their life experiences are. Unlike me, I only make my life decisions based on data, which is why I have 7 Monster Energy cans next to me on my desk that I haven't cleaned out yet. I don't engage in rigorous exercise 20 minutes a day, and I haven't seen the sunshine in 3 days. I consult data for my life decisions, unlike these people. My posture? What of it? I'm 26 years old. I don't have to worry about things like that.
Going nowhere in a hurry, worried about my kids, and yet the people on top have never had it so good. Where is the Democratic Party? Are they prepared to stand up to these powerful corporate interests, raise the minimum wage, fight for health care for all people, make sure that all of our kids get the quality education that they need, expand Social Security?
Vosh off the deep end tonight. If being off the deep end means being objectively right, then I love being in the deep end, okay? I'm down here with Dagon, you know? We're crafting up political positions you ain't even heard of, you know? Go ask fucking Innsmouth who they're voting for. You're gonna get Assad level margins on my ass.
Are they prepared to do those things? That's the issue that we have to address.
Well, as you know, your statement was met with some sharp reaction as well. This is what Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi had to say. Take a look. I'll get your reaction on the other side.
Bernie Sanders has not won.
Sorry.
Let me, with all due respect, and I have a great deal of respect for him, for what he stands for, but I don't respect him saying that the Democratic Party has abandoned the working class families.
Senator, how do you respond to Nancy Pelosi?
Well, Nancy is a friend of mine, and we've worked together on many issues. But here is the reality. I have to say to Nancy, in the Senate in the last 2 years, we have not even brought forth legislation to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, despite the fact that some 20 million people in this country are working for less than $15 an hour.
And yet we're in an environment where Republicans will like impeach Biden over coughing into a microphone, and they'll put forward bills called the Save America Act, and then if you look in the fine print, it makes rape legal. Meanwhile, Democrats were kind of discussing a $15 an hour minimum wage floor back in 2016, and they won't even talk about it anymore. All of the stuff, Republicans have only been getting more loud, more radical, more aggressive. Meanwhile, Democrats, they've dropped on everything. They don't make an active effort to soapbox off anything. So what if it doesn't pass? Push it anyway. Why does it why does it have to win in order for it to be worthwhile for you to make a stand on it? Put it forward. Put it to the House. Stand there in the House and defend the bill. Point at Republicans and say they don't give a shit about the working class. They would rather see, West Virginian Appalachians die, unable to afford their medicine and groceries and what have you, because they're too busy giving more money to the wealthy. Grow a fucking spine!
In America today, we have not brought, in the Senate, we have not brought to the floor the PRO Act to make it easier for workers to join unions. We're not talking about defined benefit pension plans so that our elderly can retire with security. We're not talking about lifting the cap on Social Security so that we can extend the solvency of Social Security and raise benefits. Bottom line, if you're an average working person out there, do you really think that the Democratic Party is going to the mats, taking on powerful special interests and fighting for you? I think the overwhelming answer is no, and that is what has got to change.
Senator, let me zoom out and just ask you about these results. You've heard some of the...
Isn't that force the vote? Thought we didn't like FTV in the House. No, force the vote was the Justice Dems withholding their vote on Hakeem Jeffries being the House Speaker on the condition that they would only provide it if a floor vote was given on Medicare for all. This is just putting forward bills and pushing them. That's it. This is just using Congress as what it has been used for hundreds of years, except for by Democrats recently, which is a place where you can set up a soapbox and yell to other politicians and the American people about how they're awful or they're, failing the electorate or whatever. Yeah, let's pretend Vosh knows what's best for Appalachians. I said they should get food and medicine. Why do you, it's my fault for looking at YouTube chat. I acknowledge this. But if you have an issue with me, why not just call me ugly or something? Why not ground it in a subjective, ad hominem rather than saying objectively retarded bullshit? Why would you do that to yourself? Just toss off your opinions. Why pretend Vosh thinks Appalachians need to eat? Everyone knows the coal fumes give them energy. I mean, I guess maybe.
Reaction throughout the Democratic Party. How much do you personally blame President Biden for this loss?
President Biden, when he came into office, said that he would be the most progressive president since FDR. And I think on domestic issues, not foreign policy, on domestic issues, he has kept his word, and the agenda that he has pushed through has been an extraordinarily strong one. But that agenda has got to be placed within the overall context of American society today. And that American society today is one in which tens of millions of working families and elderly people are struggling, while the people on top have never had.
It's worth noting, by the way, that in spite of how aggressively pro-union Biden was, Kamala Harris didn't do very well at all in the sectors that benefited from the pro-union policy. It's not like, working class or middle class industrial workers were all, pouring out to the polls to support her. Policy is good for improving people's lives. Winning election is it comes down to whether or not people like and believe in the message that you're offering them, and that's a messaging thing. That's not a reality thing.
It's so good.
But Senator, should he have gotten out of the race more quickly, as some are arguing?
I'm not going to. I supported him because I think his agenda was a strong agenda, a working class agenda. I'm not going to look backwards. Kamala ran a strong campaign. She
Smart of him. Also, Bernie Sanders isn't a Democrat insider, which means that he doesn't have access to a lot of the internal rumor milling that Nancy Pelosi is privy to. So he's speaking on this from an outside perspective. He's trying to stick to what he's good at here, which is a critique of the abandonment of the working class. He's not even a Democrat. Yeah, I mean, he mostly votes with them, but yeah.
did everything that she could.
He's not in the Discord
She
chat.
decisively won the debate. So to me, it's not just about the campaign. It's about what does the Democratic Party stand for? Do ordinary people say, yeah, that is a party that is fighting for my interest and prepared to take on the big money interest who control the economic and political life of the country? That's to me what the issue is.
Yeah, we're talking a lot about the economics. You've talked about how the Democratic Party is out of touch when it comes to economic issues. Some Democrats are saying it's not just economic issues, it's cultural issues as well. Here's what Democratic strategist James Carville had to say.
I don't care.
What killed the Democrats and what killed...
So if you look like this, you should not be a strategist for the party that's supposed to turn out young votes. Goodbye. Go enjoy your retirement, man. Shut up.
Biden was a sense of disorder. And part of the sense of disorder was the unfortunate events of what I would refer to as the woke era.
That's great, man. Thanks. That's phenomenal. You can literally look at exit polling and find that basically no one voted for these reasons, but that's cool. I mean, we can just listen to octogenarians lie because it's easier to blame queer minorities than it is to acknowledge that you're out of touch with the working class.
Has the Democratic Party's focus on identity politics gone too far, Senator?
Let me answer it this way. I think
Bernie doing internal calculus on whether or not he can say the R slur on Meet the Press. That guy was the lead strategist for Bill Clinton. Yeah, no, again, Democrats love to drag out these ghoulish fucking ancient, literally born before World War II individuals. Oh, I was right when I said octogenarian. He actually is 80 fucking years old. That's incredible. The woke era. What are you talking about, dude? Not even Republicans say that. Republican pundits and politicians do, but the Republican voters overwhelmingly voted for reasons like, dissatisfaction with the status quo, immigration, economics, inflation, blah, blah, blah. You guys understand that Trump just won with a team of campaign advisors that have not been working in politics for 40 years, right? Donald Trump's campaign advisors weren't people who worked with Reagan for the most part. There are some, but overwhelmingly the people around him, the people who are aiding him, are Heritage Foundation ghouls and these freak borderline celebrity content creator or the celeb lawyers. He's just... James Carville has lost most of the races he supported. It's ridiculous. That's great. Do you think it's because these retards are coping and need an excuse other than a lack of populism, or are they just ideologically transphobic? I'm going to take the hardline Marxist position and say that people like Carville are agents of the capital class whose job it is to obfuscate the reason the Democrats are losing and to make sure that no matter whatever lessons we learn from this, do not let it be pro-working class. You have to sell out every other group first. Sell out women, gay people, trans people, whatever. Every group. But the group you can never touch is the capital class. You cannot. The Democrats are just as beholden to the capital class as Republicans. If anything, they're stupider than Republicans because Republicans fully embrace being completely antagonistic to the uplifting of the working class in all respects except rhetoric, which they embrace wholeheartedly. Whereas Democrats they half measure on that issue, but then don't adopt pro-working class rhetoric, even if their policies occasionally are pro-working class. What's the Simpsons meme, right? Democrats, we hate life and ourselves, we can't govern. Republicans, we're just plain evil. It's basically just that. The Simpsons was right. I don't get it. Why do the Dems keep using the same strategy over and over if it doesn't work? What is the incentive for Democrats to win? Really ponder it. How do they benefit from winning? What benefit is there? Power? Power for whom? The capital class is in power no matter which party wins. I'm sure they would prefer to win. But do they want to win so badly that they would sell out the bedrock of their power? Both political parties pretend to cultivate people power when in reality they are backed by the bourgeoisie. And that is where their power really comes from. The bourgeoisie have shifted more and more in line with Republicans as time has gone on, as we have seen clearly. Bernie Sanders represented the only possibility that we had for a short time to have a party that was genuinely built on public support. It doesn't always have to be like this, you know. Here's a good example. Evo Morales in Bolivia. The business class of Bolivia unambiguously hated the guy. Backed right-wing, white supremacist opposition. But they lost. Evo Morales was beloved by the people. There are plenty of examples like this of populist candidates, just through sheer numbers, overwhelming entrenched institutional biases towards the corporations. But America has the best corporations. We are the wealthiest country in the world. We are the world tree of corporate power. So it's harder here.
The Democratic Party must continue to stand up against all forms of bigotry. And Democrats should hold their head high in saying, we led the fight for women's rights and to protect the woman's constitutional right for abortion. We led the fight for civil rights, for gay rights. That is something we should be proud of. But it's not either or, Chris, and this is the problem. You can do both.
Yeah,
you could say that I'm for raising the minimum wage to a living wage, guarantee health care for all people, expanding Social Security. And by the way, I also support a woman's right to control her own body.
Again, just keep in mind about this man being right about everything. The fact that Medicare for all would be objectively better in every possible respect except for two insurance companies is, again, a fact. It is an empirical data point. It can be measured, studied, it can be evaluated. It is scientifically testable, and it has been tested. Why, then, does every Democrat not simply support the objectively best policy? Because they are told by the wealthy not to. That's it. Don't fall into the anti-Marxist, the liberal paradigm of, well, all of these Democratic congressmen, senators, political candidates, pundits, politicians, they just haven't seen the objective data. They just haven't seen it, or they don't believe it, or they just for some reason think it's better that we get worse outcomes for more money. No, they don't. They're not acting ignorantly, at least not most of them. They just know who pays for the fucking apparatus. You know? They're just lying. They're all lying all the time. I remember when most people supported M4A and libs tried to spin it as they don't know how much it's going to cost, even though it's literally cheaper. Yeah, because they were lying. It's a gigantic, like, to those of you who balk now at how the entire Western media apparatus is complicit in lying over and over and over again to defend Israel and therefore the military-industrial complex investments that it represents, they've always been doing this. Always. How are you going to pay for Medicare for all? It's cheaper than the current system. A yes and no question. It asked and answered. Did it change anything? No. Vosh, I do think some are blinded by ideology rather than lying. Yeah, voters are. For the most part, the people up on top know perfectly well what the game is. And people who are telling lies are often trapped in like an elaborate web of self-rationalization where they don't feel like they're lying. Like maybe a lot of people who understand that Medicare for all would have been cheaper were saying stuff like, well, how are we going to pay for it? Because the shift from private funding to being paid for by raised taxes would have like, well, then you have to raise taxes. Okay, well, the taxes that are raised will be less than the amount you were already paying for your private health insurance. Okay, but then we reset the conversation. Like they construct this like elaborate asked, answered, and asked again system where they can think that they're being honest, but like, you know, let's not be fools.
Etc. It's not either or, it's going forward in both directions.
You know, I've been speaking to some Democrats who are concerned because now President-elect Trump has beaten 2 women candidates, and their concern is that it will make it more difficult to nominate a woman candidate in the future. Do you share that concern, Senator?
No, I don't. I think it's not a question. Look, I'm not going to deny that there is sexism in this country, that there's racism, there's homophobia. It's there. But on the other hand, I think what the American people want to support, whether it's a woman, a man, a black or a white, or Latino, whatever, is they want to support somebody who is standing up, Kristen, and fighting for them. People are in pain. People are hurting. They can't afford to go to a doctor. They can't afford to send their kids to childcare or to college. They're worried about future generations and what kind of standard of living they will have. Here is the bottom line, and it has to be dealt with. You got an economy today doing phenomenally well for the people on top. It is not working for the working class. All right? How do we address those issues and in the richest country on the history of the world, create an economy that works for all? That is the issue. And by the way, what Trump did in his election,
he's very good at centering the conversation. It helps when he actually believes in something, yeah,
is to say, I know that you're hurting.
By the way, notice how even though he's been repeating the exact same talking points, basically verbatim, word for word for 8 years, he doesn't sound anywhere near as much of a, like, consultant class stump speecher as Kamala Harris does, where, like, Kamala Harris begins the first word of what will be 17 sentences and you're already rolling your eyes because you know that everything here is just this, like, soulless, pre-planned. Meanwhile, it comes across as authentic for him because he actually believes what he's saying. It's a critical difference, actually, believing what you're saying.
And the reason is they got millions of people coming across the border illegal. They're eating your dogs. They're eating your cats. He gave an explanation. It happened to be a pretty crazy explanation. Yes, we got to strengthen the borders, but that is not going to raise wages for working people or provide health care to all people. The Democrats need an explanation, and that explanation is corporate greed and the power of the billionaire class. I know that's uncomfortable for people in the Democratic Party, some people, but that is the issue we have to address.
Senator, quickly before I let you go, I do want to ask you about the Supreme Court. Some Democrats behind the scenes quietly talking about the possibility, should Justice Sotomayor step down, to allow President Biden to appoint someone who's younger. She's only 70 years old. Is that something that you would support? Do you think she should step down?
No, I don't.
Have you heard any talk of this?
A little bit, yes. I don't think it's
He doesn't want to comment on this. He's trying to stick to his message.
a sensible approach.
And you don't think it's a sensible approach?
Correct.
All right. Senator Bernie Sanders, thank you very much for your time this morning and your perspective. We really.
Yeah, they might just block her replacement at this point. Maybe. Top Senate Majority Leader candidate John Thune announces he is open to fulfilling Trump's demands for rapid appointments and stonewalling Democratic judges before Trump takes office. Yeah, that sounds about right. All options are on the table. Yep. Yippee! Anyway, I guess the message that I'm trying to hit home with this is that the Democratic leadership is about as evil as you could possibly imagine. And every hyperbolic statement people on left Twitter have made about how they're evil and how they don't care if fascism takes over this country is more or less true. I just tend to agree with the other stuff they say around it, you know? But that that brick in the wall